Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, John Turner had a state funeral, and it was limited, but Evan Solomon gives him a 2-minute sending off, I suppose, and we'll listen to just a bit of it here. Here we go.
Today, the country laid to rest the 17th Prime Minister of Canada, John Turner. In a state funeral that was diminished by the pandemic, Canadians watched. John Turner's flag-draped casket was carried into Toronto's St. Michael's Cathedral Basilica for a full state funeral. The crowd limited to just 170 people because of COVID-19. Over his political career, Mr. Turner represented 3 provinces as a Liberal Member of Parliament and served as Prime Minister for 79 days in 1984. It hardly defines his decades-long service. He died September 19th at his home. He was 91. His daughter, Elizabeth Turner, says some of her fondest memories of her father were spending time in the Canadian wilderness and surrounded by family.
All right, well, and if you want to watch the rest, the link is in the description. A good send-off. I mean, you know, you've got to do this kind of pageantry. You've got to do this kind of stuff, and it's good for the country. And he was only Prime Minister for 79 days, blah, blah, blah. I wonder why 170 people. Maybe that's not nice to point out. I don't know, but why 170 people? Who made that decision? Was it like the space? Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's where my brain goes. Why 170 people? Could I have could somebody who died close to me have a 170 person funeral, or would it be limited further? And is it like controlled by the space? Could I have 170 people outside? I don't know. Yesterday, I talked about Doug Ford talking about, or I saw a tweet where apparently Doug Ford said he wanted to see evidence before moving on shutting down restaurants and small businesses. And I said I would play the clip if I found it, and I found it. So here it is. And I played it yesterday on Speaking Moistly. And if you're interested, Speaking Moistly is up. And well, here it is. Here we go.
And I'm sure you went into restaurants. I have. They have been following the guidelines, have been putting up barriers, they're putting up masks, they have hand sanitizer, they're separating their tables by 6 feet. And because we have some bad actors, I'm going to demolish people's lives. I'm not prepared to do that right now, unless it's just hardcore evidence, it's widespread across an industry. Picking on restaurants, it's just not the avenue that we want to go down.
Follow up?
Picking on restaurants is not the avenue that we want to go down. I'm not sure that the follow-up's worthwhile, so I'm gonna leave it there. This encourages me to think that maybe we're not headed headlong into another lockdown. I hope. Fingers crossed. Cooler heads may prevail. The stats that I've seen so far have not increased. I haven't seen a huge increase in deaths. I haven't seen a huge increase in hospitalization numbers. I haven't seen a huge increase in any of the metrics that really matter, the ICU numbers, etc. And I try and check that in the afternoon. So I checked yesterday afternoon. I haven't checked this morning because I've got other things to do in the morning. But I'm glad that Mr. Ford is seeing things well and communicating that he's looking for evidence. And that's important, right? Not just one metric, more than one metric that looks bad, right? And you've got to get the public buy-in. They've been floating this Thanksgiving balloon, and everybody I've talked to this last week said, "Hey, what about Thanksgiving? What do you think about Thanksgiving?" Everybody, right? And I say, well, like, would you stop Thanksgiving? Would you not go to Thanksgiving because there's a flu outbreak in a city? Like, would you not go to Toronto because there's a flu outbreak in Toronto? Would you not go to, I wouldn't go to Toronto because there's a guns and gang outbreak in Toronto. But would you not go to, like, a close nearby city, Kitchener or Waterloo, Cambridge, if there was an outbreak there in a hospital or in a school? I mean, I think that would be, I think that might be a little overdoing it, right? Like, I think that might be a little fear-mongery. And you'll see why I'm making the flu comparison in a few minutes anyway. We're going to touch on that. Brian Lilly did a piece on that. But again, I don't think poorly of myself for not being worried about sending my kids to school during flu season. I just don't. I don't think that they're going to die of flu. It's not very likely, right? And COVID kills less kids than flu on average, right? As far as we've seen so far. There's good evidence for that. So again, I think that maybe overreaction on the part of the public is come to be expected, maybe because of the rhetoric that's being shared by the media and all of that. But please, I hope cooler heads prevail. I hope cooler heads prevail in press conferences. I hope the constant fear diet is going to ease off, right? Like, let's move into Halloween and not constant fear, right? Let's do some spooky and ghosty fear and not, you might die of this pandemic, because it's not looking likely. It's not looking likely. The numbers aren't panning out. And we'll get back to the pandemic in a minute. I wanted this to open the show because that's encouraging. That's encouraging to me. And I talked about it yesterday. Okay, moving into the political news, or the federal political news. The Post-Millennial says Trudeau Liberals and NDP vote unanimously to kill the WE scandal investigations. So I wanted to find out about what's going on here. And this is just kind of the first hurdle. Liberal NDP vote to shut down Conservatives' renewed push to examine the WE affair. The Liberals and NDP members on a House of Commons committee voted on Tuesday to sunset another Conservative attempt to examine the WE charity scandal and invite the Prime Minister and key members of his cabinet to testify. I'll say really, really quickly, this isn't the right venue to have this discussion. Yes, it's damaging to Trudeau, but if there's criminal charges and stuff, I mean, all of that's long gone. If there's criminal action, if there's stuff that could have been really bad for the Liberals, I don't think that we're going to see it now. I think this is now just political posturing, right? Like, that's, so not that I'm saying it doesn't matter. It certainly matters, but this is posturing, right? And they've had a long time now to get their stories straight. They've had a long time now to do what they need to do to be above board. The day people testified, the day Morneau testified, is the day he paid back the improper vacation payments, right? Like, the day we testified is the day they registered as lobbyists, right? They fixed the problems, right? Like, this is political posturing. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. Back to that. Back to this. I think it's worthwhile political posturing. The Liberal chair of the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, PROC, Ruby Sahota, sorry if I got that wrong, outlined her reasoning for shutting down further study of the issue, arguing that Conservative House leader Karen Vecchio, sorry if I got that wrong, motioned to review the reasons for prorogation and call to the advanced disclosure of WE charity-related documents presupposes the reason for dissolving Parliament. Under changes made by the Liberals in response to what they viewed as a misuse of prorogation by past Conservative governments, Trudeau has to table a report in the House 20 sitting days into a new session detailing the reasons for discontinuing the session of Parliament. The report will be presented to the PROC to consider, and the Conservative position is that in order to prepare, they'd like to receive in advance emails, documents, notes, and other records from the Prime Minister's office and the Privy Council's office dating back to the day WE Charity was named to run the grant program concerning options, plans, and preparations for the prorogation of Parliament. Undertaking a pre-study at this time would be seen as premature, Sahota said, in this instance because the government has not yet tabled in the House a report outlining the reasons for prorogation. The committee is not in a position to have a base of reference from which to begin the study, nor would it be appropriate to presuppose the outcome of the report. The Liberals were joined by NDP MP Rachel Blaney in voting to uphold the committee chair's ruling, while the Conservatives and Bloc Québécois MP Alain Ferrand voted against it. NDP House Leader Peter Julian called the Conservatives' motion a dog's breakfast in an interview with CTV News on Tuesday. It was simply procedurally incorrect, he says. It was throwing too many things together. I'm a little surprised the official opposition should understand procedure, but I think they just made a number of errors, he said. He said his party is committed to continue the WE charity investigation, but in a more professional way, which he says includes putting forward a motion to create a separate special committee to study a host of expenditure allegations implicating the Liberals. We believe one special committee that is focused on the allegations is the best way to proceed, because otherwise what we've got is not only duplication, but also potentially gaping holes between the various committees studying this at various times, Julian said. Julian said the idea, if passed first by a standing committee and then by the House of Commons, could focus not only on the Canada Student Service Grant contract, but on the controversial outsourcing of the COVID-19 rent relief program to mortgage finance company MCAP, which employs the husband of Trudeau's chief of staff, Katie Telford. So bundling these things up, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of scandals, and yes, we should certainly look at all of them, but bundling them up, it seems like when they would put in Reddit a mega thread, right? So like stop all the conversation, put it all in the one thread, and then lock all the users. Back to this. All other committee activities, including the Finance and Ethics Committee's study of the WE charity affair, have been suspended since dissolving of Parliament, and won't be considered until new members are named and a chair elected. At that point, members will decide whether studies will be resumed. So I wanted that to be clear. Yes, the NDP voted this down, voted the getting the documents ahead of time down, but there's going to be an opportunity. But this signals not a great alliance, right? Not a great alliance for getting to the bottom of the We Charity scandal or the MCA, I think it's MCAT, whatever, the mortgage company. I'm looking for it now. Hold on. MCAP, not T. And, like, I think getting to the bottom of that is beneficial. I don't know that doing it this way is in the best interest of the Canadian public. I don't know that doing it this way is better than and doing it in committee or doing it in the way that has been done traditionally, right? Like, why have this special committee to study the Liberals' mismanagement, right? Like, why not just bring the government down? Why not just say, like, we understand that you did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, and this makes the sponsorship scandal look like they did nothing wrong at all. And instead of studying it, we just want to stop you from governing badly. Like, that's the mechanism of government, right? Or it should be. Jagmeet Singh, though, thinks this: my number one priority is to fight for Canadians and to hold Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accountable when he refuses to. How it started, how it went. I like that he's sharing Narcity. Jagmeet Singh wants Trudeau to sort out paid sick leave and a curb extension, and then Jagmeet Singh says a deal on paid sick leave was reached and it could mean no fall election. He is very happy with the results. So he's saying that he's holding them accountable and fighting for Canadians and blah, 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 blah. But he's forgetting about, like, all of the corruption that we just talked about. And they're saying, oh, we want to hold them accountable in this way, blah, blah, blah. But that's not holding them accountable. These scandals are enough, each by themselves, to bring down a government, right? $16 orange juice brought down Paul Martin's government, right? There was definitely, that was Oda, right? Was that Paul Martin or was that wasn't Harper? The sponsorship scandal, right? Like, and there's so many other smaller scandals that have brought down other governments. And I hope I'm not crossing my wires there. I feel like I'm crossing my wires. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I sometimes make mistakes. But there are so many smaller scandals that, taken together, these scandals are undermining the confidence that the Canadian public has in these Liberals to govern. And just because the NDP say it's okay, I don't think necessarily means it's okay, right? And I think that holding the government accountable is not getting paid sick leave that has a sunset and a curb extension. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily it. I think Canadians are sick and tired of being lied to and of having this unending march of distractions instead of solving the actual problems. That's the issue. That's one of the main issues. And Jagmeet Singh's not helping. He's propping up. He's a fourth party that lost half its seats. Mouclair lost seats and lost the leadership. Jagmeet Singh is now using his balance of power better than Mouclair did, I guess. But Mouclair did more for the NDP and lost his leadership. And Jagmeet Singh is using the balance of power, certainly, but he's not growing the base, and he's tying his political bandwagon to Trudeau, right? If Trudeau goes down in flames, so did the NDP. But I mean, they can say, oh, we held them accountable, but they didn't. They didn't, not when it mattered. They didn't bring the government down. This is funny because these are elected officials. Charlie Angus is a well-known NDP guy, 6-time elected MP for Timmins, James Bay, blah, blah, blah. And he says, it doesn't take much these days for angry conservative men to take to Twitter announcing that they are leaving our beautiful and tolerant country. Oh, and they claim they're taking 2 provinces with them, as if. Grow up. So I think that's arrogant and not taking the temperature of what's really happening in our country. Isn't the NDP supposed to be standing up for Canadians and not saying that they're better than conservative people? Angry conservative men? Right? Here's another one. This guy is Alistair McGregor, and he's a re-elected member of Parliament for... No, I'm not going to try it. He's a re-elected member of Parliament. Haha. And he says, bathing in conservative rage tears on Twitter today. I didn't realize they triggered so easily, but I understand. I mean, they don't have one positive substantive improvement they can claim to have made during this entire pandemic, and were outplayed by the fourth party. Outplayed by the fourth party. Yeah, I said you're a fourth party that lost half its seats. Your last leader lost leadership for less. You claim to hold the Liberals accountable, but you shut down the We investigation. Triggered. Are you being serious, Alistair? People are upset with your party because you lied, and you're not holding the Liberals accountable. This is a poll. I don't believe the polls. I just think this is interesting. If you believe the polls, well, I mean, the right is in real trouble in Canada. 36 plus 20 is a lot, right? And 32 plus 7 is not. So... I don't believe these polls, but here's 338 Canada says federal voting intentions from Leger, pre-Green leadership votes. Liberals keep the lead, but CPC within reach at 32 to 36. Yeah, I think O'Toole's playing better. But again, I don't believe the polls because they can make them say whatever they want. And here they're saying this is a straight result, but they do pre-screening, right? Well, we've got enough of your age and race. Sorry about that. You can't answer this poll, right? And they just redirect you. It happened during the election as well. Like I'm on calling lists and all that sort of stuff for municipal and federal politics, and they call to poll me, and I only got 1 or 2 calls, right? Not so many calls, and I got more before. I got more when I answered differently, let's just say. Raj Grewal, do you remember him? He was a former Liberal MP, and he has fraud breach of trust case adjourned to January. It's amazing what the Liberals and the NDP, right? Like it's not like they're scandal free. It's not like former MPs aren't having court dates and current MPs, former Liberal caucus members, don't currently have court dates. Marwan Tobera. And like, I mean, how many Conservative MPs are pending their court date? How many? 1 or 2? None? Oh, okay. I don't actually know if none. I haven't looked it up at this point, but I haven't seen any news about a Conservative MP who's got a pending court date. If you've got some, please send it my way. I'm interested. Here's Jason Kenney, and he says, what's happening in Canada's energy industry is an economic emergency. The federal government must treat this with the same gravity as it would treat a crisis in central Canadian manufacturing. I'll give him 20 seconds or so. Here we go.
So let me send a very clear message to the Prime Minister and the Government of Canada. This announcement today by Suncor underscores that what's happening in Alberta today is nothing less than an economic emergency. The Government of Canada would be moving heaven and earth if we saw layoffs of this scale in the central Canadian manufacturing industry. And yet last week, we saw a federal throne speech which did not even reference the crisis in the largest sector in Canada's economy, our oil and gas sector, in the province that has done more, far more than any other, to create jobs, wealth, opportunity, and government revenues over recent decades, thanks in part to the work of companies like Suncor and the men and women being affected by these layoffs.
Yeah, so economic emergency. This is not very good. Here's another one. Remember the other day when I asked Greg to dig on the union involvement with the NDP? This is interesting in light of that, right? And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, the QP said, we are the NDP, we were there, we're founding partners, and we are the NDP. So Alberta unions call for boycott of businesses that support Jason Kenney's UPC post names on website. A conglomerate of Alberta unions is posting the names of businesses that have donated to affiliates of the United Conservative Party in a new campaign to boycott those who helped Jason Kenney's party get elected. The website Boycott UCP donors lists businesses that have donated to conservative-leaning political action funds and third-party advertisers such as Shaping Alberta's Future and the Alberta Advantage Fund. Sorry, the video is running by itself. So is that political interference? Just because the unions say they are the NDP, right? Is that political interference to do that? This was a concerning one that I saw. Toronto area anti-masker charged with breaking quarantine law. I thought, what's going on here? I didn't realize he had been traveling outside of the country, but one of Ontario's most vocal critics of health measures meant to keep people safe during the COVID-19 pandemic has been charged with violating Federal Quarantine Act, police say. Chris Sequoia, 37 of King City, Ontario, has been charged with failing to comply with an order under the Act, Toronto police said Tuesday. His wife was also charged, according to a news release. The charges come after both broke federally imposed travel quarantines to appear at anti-lockdown rallies in downtown Toronto for 2 weekends in a row after traveling to Europe. Social media posts show Sequoia, who I'm getting that wrong, so I apologize, sir, who also goes by Chris Sky, spoke at an anti-lockdown rally in Ireland on September 12th. A post on his Facebook page indicates he landed back in Canada on September 20th. Police first ticketed Sequoia. No, I'm just going to keep saying the Sequoia thing. Police first ticketed Chris Sky on September 26th when he was seen in Toronto in the area of Yonge and Dundas streets during a protest against mask wearing and lockdowns. According to a police news release, Chris Sky and his wife went to another rally in the area last Saturday, which was attended by 500 non-mask wearing participants. They're scheduled to appear in virtual court hearing on November 12th. So they're ticketing for this kind of stuff, so that's interesting. I was more concerned that it was they were starting to target leaders or organizers of protests, and that was the charge, but that wasn't the case. So I wanted to let you know that I haven't seen that yet, but I will tell you if I do see that. Here's an interesting one. Barry and Honey Sherman estate trustees tell Supreme Court that unsealing files poses grave safety risks. I've reported on this case before. This is interesting timing considering everything else that's going on, the U.S. election and all of that stuff. But here's it looks like this stuff is going to be unsealed and should be out in the coming months. I'll give you the rundown here. The estate of murder victims Barry and Honey Sherman argued Tuesday in the Supreme Court of Canada that unsealing files related to the wealthy Toronto couple would pose serious safety risks to estate trustees and beneficiaries. A lawyer for a Toronto Star newspaper reporter seeking access to the files, told a 7-judge panel the attempt to keep the material under wraps runs contrary to the principles of open court proceedings. After hearing the arguments, the court reversed its decision, which is expected in the coming months. So at some point in the coming months, this stuff's going to get unsealed. In June 2018, a judge issued an order protecting the files, which concerned the appointment of estate trustees and would ordinarily be available for public inspection. The order stemmed from the notion that individuals named as beneficiaries or trustees of the estates would be at risk of harm because the Shermans were found murdered in their home. Soon after, Toronto Star reporter Kevin Donovan, who had written extensively about the sensational case, applied to the Ontario Superior Court of Justice to have the files unsealed. In August 2018, the court dismissed his application and ordered that the files relating to the Shermans' estate be sealed for 2 years. The Ontario Court of Appeal overturned the decision, saying the idea trustees would be at risk amounted to speculation and provided no basis for a sealing order. Barry Sherman was the billionaire chairman and chief executive pharmaceutical firm Apotex, I think that's how you say that, Apotex, Incorporated. He and his wife were philanthropists and well-known members of the Toronto Society, sparking intense interest in their deaths and the resulting police investigation. The murders remain unsolved. In a written submission to the Supreme Court, the Shermans' estate and trustees contending the general public interest in maintaining court openness cannot outweigh the serious invasion of privacy and grave physical safety risk posed by disclosure. Lawyer Chantal Sett, that's horrible. The lawyer expanded on those arguments during the hearing Tuesday, saying the appeal court erred in deciding that the privacy and dignity of those left in the wake of violent crime are purely personal concerns that cannot, without more, justify a sealing order. This so-called Privacy Plus model adopted by the Court of Appeal is inconsistent with decades of case law and our society's understanding of privacy rights. So yeah, they're gonna unseal it, which is good news for transparency. And their case is flimsy. Like, we can't unseal this because reasons. People might be in danger. They might be in danger anyway, right? Like, living is dangerous. You might get hit by a car. Sorry about your luck. Okay, Brian Lilly says long-term care deaths due to COVID were only 3.7% above a bad flu year through the first half of the year. Read and retweet. And very briefly, long-term care deaths data show COVID not much above a bad flu year. A review of the death statistics from January through June shows that in 3 out of 5 months, the number of deaths in 2020 was lower than the 6-year average. It was only in April and May that the deaths count was above average. The Toronto Sun obtained data on the number of deaths by month from 2014 through to 2020 from January through June. This data shows that in January, February, March, and June, the numbers of deaths in 2020 was below the average of the previous 6 years. In April and May, there was an undeniable and tragic spike. For the period of 2014 through 2019, the average number of deaths in April across the province's more than 600 long-term care facilities was 1,893. In April of 2020, that figure spiked to 3,066. For the month of May, the average from 2014 through 2019 was 1,782, but in May 2020, it jumped to 2,322 in an increase of 540. For the January through June period, the death toll is 1,313 above the average over the previous 6 years. According to provincial statistics, the number of people listed as dying of COVID-19 in long-term care facilities by the end of June stood at 1,710. While there's an increase of 11.3% over the 6-year average, 23% of those deaths would have happened by another means, according to the 6-year average. Compared to a 2018, a particularly bad year for the flu, there was just 462 more deaths across Ontario in 2020 from January to June, or an increase of 3.7%. Statistics don't bring warmth. They don't bring comfort. The dry numbers will never bring a loved one back. Yet looking at these numbers and learning from them is vital to understanding what went right and what went wrong during COVID-19. We could even learn for future flu seasons. Yeah, I think that that's very true. And it's interesting that, if you compare to 2018, the spike is not that big. And yes, cherry picking data does not give the whole story, so it's better to compare averages, etc. And any death is not good. But should we be locking down our economy for this? Is that the right way to deal with this? By punishing the whole citizenry? I don't know. I don't think so. Here's CBC, why vaccine nationalism could prolong the COVID-19 pandemic. Vaccine nationalism. This is the craziest cockamamie idea I've ever heard. And I think that they're trying to use it to divide people. They're trying to use it to get people on one side or another side. And it's a weird, there's something with this, and I haven't figured out what it is yet, but I'll read it to you and we'll figure it out maybe. And if I figure it out, I'll mention it. Okay. Why vaccine nationalism could prolong the COVID-19 pandemic. The race to secure a vaccine against COVID-19 has pitted country against country, which could undermine efforts to control the virus worldwide. While the WHO is calling for those at highest risk of getting and spreading the virus to receive a vaccine first, rich countries are making deals to stockpile their own supplies even before safe and effective vaccines exist. And that comes with risks. This kind of vaccine nationalism means every country fends for itself, with wealthier nations buying up supplies of vaccines and leaving little for other nations. I have to wonder, is there a finite amount of vaccine? Can we only make X amount of vaccine? Is there only enough for 1 billion doses, let's say, and there are 7 billion or 8 billion people on the planet? Like, what are they? I haven't heard that. I thought you could just continue to make doses, right? Like you could just make the doses, right? Am I misunderstanding? Is there a finite amount of doses that you could possibly make? Or is it just resources to make the doses? And if it's just resources, well, you can continually make the doses until you get enough doses, right? Like why the us and them, or this, we're not leaving enough for other people. I don't know. I don't know about that. Back to this. You could take the view that your population might like you better if you were the one grabbing all the vaccine, Harris said, but your population won't love you if the pandemic is going on and on and on. It's a weird threat. Canada has made deals to secure 282 million doses of potential vaccine. The population of Canada is 37 million. 282 million doses. The federal government has also signed on to WHO's COVAX program, which aims to buy and fairly distribute shots globally. 282 million doses? What it could possibly be? 5 doses for everyone? 6 doses for everyone? What is that? Hold on. Okay, 7.5 doses per every man, woman, and child in Canada if there's 37 million people. So 282 million divided by 37 million is 7.621. What? Why do we need 7 doses for everybody? Okay. Why do we need 7 doses for everybody? Please explain this to me. I don't understand it. Okay, moving on. 282 million doses. How much per dose? How much did that cost us? Back to this. If the vaccines wealthy countries have pre-ordered directly from manufacturers don't pan out, COVAX offers a life insurance policy of sorts. Under COVAX, they would have access to vaccines that did succeed, but only enough for 20% of the population to ensure global coverage. I mean, I don't even think that 20% of the population will want to get the vaccine if one even becomes available. But doesn't this also seem like a really bad idea? We've just got enough for 20% because reasons. And yes, we spent a whole bunch of money on 282 million useless doses. Sorry about that. Re-elect us, please. Oh, it doesn't matter because the NDP will prop us up. Back to this. Alison Kelvin, a virologist evaluating made in Canada vaccines at the Viod Intervac lab in Saskatoon, says she thinks it's important for Canada to secure doses for its own people. Quote, I often think of this as a situation where we're all on a plane, and when the plane's going down, they ask you to make sure that you have your mask on before you help others, Kelvin said. What imagery? Are you a doctor? Imagine you're on a plane and you're crashing. Keeping our own country running is going to help us help other people prepare. So the plane didn't crash? Okay. Sorry. This struck me as funny, and it's not, but the imagery here is just so funny. Like, Imagine, we can't do anything about it, but put on your oxygen mask. Canada's pre-bought about 6 or 7 times its population. Emmanuel said we need to think through that. Is that a kind of hoarding, or isn't that a kind of just wasting a lot of money? I was going to say a crap ton of money, and that's it. Isn't that just a really good way of wasting a crap ton of money on a vaccine that doesn't work and doesn't exist yet? Like, fundamentally, why isn't anybody saying this? Here's Patty Haydu, and this is hilarious too. This is funny. It's funny, except it's terrifying, okay? It's funny, except it's terrifying. This is Trudeau's health minister giving the green light to mass immigration again. This is October 2nd, and the bottom here says, October 2nd, Health Minister Patty Haydu on the plan to begin reopening Canada's borders to international students and immigration on October 8th, 2020. So here she is. It's 13 seconds. I know it's nails on chalkboard, but here we go.
The increase in COVID-19 cases is due to community transmission, not travel. So as Dr. Tam said earlier today, we all need to double down on our efforts to stop the spread of the virus.
How do they know? How do they know it's community and not travel? Especially when, here's an August 10th article, passengers with COVID-19 keep arriving in Canada on international flights, CTV. I know that's August 10th. And you know, I decided to get one from yesterday. Or no, 2 days ago, and then yesterday too. Here's 13 Toronto flights have confirmed coronavirus cases in almost 2 weeks. But, you know, don't worry about it. Yesterday, 2 more Toronto flights have confirmed coronavirus cases. Coronavirus, not COVID-19, coronavirus.
The increase in COVID-19 cases is due to community transmission, not travel. So as Dr. Tam said earlier...
So how do you know? Follow up? How do you know? I understand. Thank you for the tip. I do understand what you're talking about. How do you know? Patty Haydu. I don't understand why there are reporters who take Patty Haydu's words, like, we know that it's community transmission and not travel, at face value and don't push back. Why do we not have a press that holds these people accountable? Why do we not have a government that holds the Liberals accountable? Here is the last story for today. Super cluster funding behind schedule, unlikely to create 10,000 jobs, says Parliamentary Budget Officer. Everything the Liberals do and touch goes poorly. The Innovation Supercluster Initiative, and I thought, what is this? I remember reading about this now that I've gone through this, but It was here it is a new funding initiative designed to help strengthen Canada's most promising clusters and accelerate economic growth in highly innovative industries, advanced manufacturing, agri-food, clean technology, digital technology, health, bioscience, clean resources, infrastructure, transportation, while positioning Canadian firms for global leadership. The Innovation Superclusters Initiative will invest up to $950 million by 2022 to accelerate the growth and development of business-led innovation superclusters in Canada. Here's the article. It says supercluster funding, $74 million behind schedule, according to new PBO report. So this thing that's supposed to stimulate the economy, it's supposed to keep Canadians in the most in-demand people in the world, and we're putting things out there that matter and blah 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 blah. They're just not spending, right? They're not spending the money to get these things rolling. And really, if you just open up the free market, these things get rolling, right? But if you limit everybody to all of these draconian rules and standards and blah 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 blah, it's death by 1,000 cuts. You can't start anything because you're not compliant, right? Like, you're not compliant with all the many things you have to comply with to start XYZ business, right? And that's why Trump talks about cutting regulations. That's why Trump talks about, being business friendly. Like, this is anything but business friendly. They're throwing money at this. They're trying to solve this with the wrong tool, in my opinion. And what they should be doing is getting out of the way of business and making it a business-friendly environment and allowing businesses to thrive. And I'm not saying allowing businesses to be bad neighbors and to pollute or to impact the air or the water negatively or anything to that effect. I'm talking about sure, having some baseline regulations, but let's not double up. Let's make sure that people can start things and innovate in Canada, right? Rather than kowtow to the government. Like, it seems the longer this goes on, the longer this stuff happens, it seems like creeping CCP style communism, Communist Chinese Party style communism, modern communism, and that's terrifying. The last story for this morning, I didn't hear about this. Remembrance Day ceremony 2020 will be a more intimate commemoration. It's limited to 100 people. So why did John Turner get 170 at his funeral, and we can't get more than 100 people at the Remembrance Day ceremony. There's no Veterans Parade, no Canadian Armed Forces Parade, a reduced colored party, wreaths pre-positioned such that no wreath barriers or assistance will be required, no members of the cadets or junior rangers present. Man, like, this is the 75th anniversary, you know? And that's just terrible. I wonder if we could get a protest going. Man, there's something we need to remember. We need to remember lest we forget, right? And that is important, and it's important to do it, and this is very disappointing. I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful